Welcome everyone to our Discovery Speaker Series. My name is Clarissa Felling and I am the Program and Volunteer Coordinator at the Puget Sound Estuarium. I run this program called Discovery Speaker Series to allow educators, scientists, earth advocates, and artists a chance or a platform to share their work or their current research with a broader audience like you. And so I want to thank you all for joining in and listening to our Discovery Speaker Series. Don't forget that you can also print off coloring pages to go along with each of these talks. That way you can get the whole family involved, or if you're like me, I like to color while listening to podcasts, so I thought I'd offer it to you all as well. So to go along with our current rotating exhibit about orcas, I am pleased to welcome Ellie Kinley, president of the Sacred Sea, a nonprofit. So we're going to learn a bit more about Sacred Sea and the work that Ellie does. And then we will open it up to questions from you. So as you're listening to this, if you have any questions, you can type them down in the comment section below, and we'll get to those questions as we go along. So without further ado, Ellie, if you would like to introduce yourself and tell people a bit more about what Sacred Sea is.
Well, good evening, everyone. Ellie Kinley is my name. My traditional name, though, is Tomas, and I often go by that. I am a Lummi tribal member. I'm not good at introducing myself. I'm just really pleased to be asked to speak to people that are as passionate about the Salish Sea as I am. There's never been a generation in my family that hasn't fished. We simply moved from being subsistence fishers to commercial fishers. And I've been a commercial fisher since I was 23. And our life on the Salish Sea, we've seen a lot of changes in those years. And it started to become really apparent that this isn't going to be around for my my grandkids, or my great-grandkids. I actually had my grandson out fishing with us, so I do have a grandson out there, but the great-grandkids, I don't want it to just be stories that they are hearing about salmon and how we once caught them. It became apparent that I couldn't just keep fishing. I needed to become part of the solution. I needed to help the Salish Sea voice what's happening to her, because her voice wasn't very loud and people didn't seem to be paying attention. So I probably started doing some of this work about 10 years ago, when we really noticed a decline in the Salish Sea in herring and salmon. At this point, can't even remember the first question, so.
No worries. We're just here to have a conversation. Why was Sacred Sea started?
To save the Salish Sea. And we just don't know if what's going on out there, if we're past the tipping point. And so we knew there were some things that really needed to start happening, and happening soon, or we would have been past that point of no return, and there would be getting, we wouldn't be getting the salmon back. And if we lose the salmon, we lose the orca, we lose Xwe'chi'eXen, and literally lose ourselves, because who are we without salmon? We are the Lactamish people, the people of the sea, and we call ourselves the salmon people. You can't be the salmon people without salmon in our Salish Sea. And they can't just become a story that we tell our great grandkids about. I guess to further explain that, being a fisherman, it is commercially fishing, but to us, it's going out in the islands. There is nothing like that feeling of that first opening when we get back out in the San Juan Islands for the first time. And you know you're home. And we had hundreds of village sites in the islands. And so it's going back home. It's going back to where our ancestors are. It fills a hole that you kind of builds up all winter long. But come spring, come summer, and we know we're going back out there, it makes you whole again. So that's why it's important for us to protect the Salish Sea and to stop what's going on out there now.
Yeah, there's a very deep cultural significance to the Salish Sea and to the Lummi people. And what was the name that you called yourselves rather than the Lummi people? It's the
Lactamish.
Lactamish.
People of the sea.
People of the sea. And then when did you start, when were you the president of Sacred Sea, and like, what's your motto? What's the nonprofit striving for?
Everything that has to do with protecting the Salish Sea, fighting the projects that need to be fought. It's, how do you describe it? It's a big circle that if we don't stop marching on like we are, there's a project coming up. It's across the border. It's in Canada. It's called the Roberts Bank Terminal 2. They have one now, and it's a coal terminal and a cargo ship area where they unload. And they are literally, their docks are probably half a mile from the US border. So the coal they load there, the coal dust that hits the water, it drifts into the US twice a day. Every ebb tide brings that coal dust in. And now they want to build a whole nother pier. And they want to bring in what's considered the world's largest container ships that are bigger than any that come into the Puget Sound now. These are bigger than our aircraft carriers that we have. And those ships will travel through what we as Lummi consider our UNA, our usual and accustomed area for hunting, fishing, and gathering. And they'll do great damage. And the Fraser River salmon, as it is, they're barely hanging on. This was my third year of not being able to fish sockeye salmon. So there are not enough fish returning to that river that allows us to keep any of them. So we just let them all go up the river in hopes that in one of the future cycles, we can fish them again. That's how on the breaking point the Fraser River salmon are. And the Fraser River, from where we sit at Lummi, where I sit, it's 14 miles north. So yeah, it's in Canada, but it's the river, it's the river we've always harvested from. So the purpose of Sacred Lands Conservancy, operating as the Sacred Sea, is just to work on all the things that need to be done to restore the Salish Sea. Roberts Bank, of course, is one of them that's coming up. And they're all intertwined. You've got us, you've got the salmon, you've got the orca. You can't take one of those three out of the picture and survive. The orca, of course, need the salmon. They need Chinook. We need the salmon. And so we just need a Salish Sea that's back to the levels like in the 70s and 80s, when the Salish Sea was thriving before it started this decline. And the orca were happy and we were happy. That's all we want. Is to get
Seems
back
like
to
a
that.
simple answer, but
Right?
not going to be. We've already got some questions pouring in. How can people help support Sacred Sea and their mission?
Well, we do have a website, and you can go to the website and see what we're doing, what our latest things are that we're doing. One of the biggest parts of our campaign is we want to bring back our Southern resident that's in Miami Sea Aquarium. She goes by Tokatai. The aquarium calls her Lolita. We've named her Sk'aliCh'eLh. We gave her a traditional name that comes from the village site where she was taken from. And she was taken 51 years ago now. She was 3 years old. She was captured and put in a pen, and her mom sat outside of her pen crying for a week. And then you also have to understand orcas. Her mom still knows, still misses her daughter. And Sk'aliCh'eLh, she still recognizes the songs of the Southern residents. So even though she's been in the world's tiniest tank performing for her meals every day, I have to believe that she has held on, and she is strong enough because she knows she's going to come home. She knows she's going to get returned to the Salish Sea. And our working to bring her home, that's part of an apology to the Southern residents, to say, we know there was a wrong done 50 years ago, and we're trying to correct it. We're trying to bring your daughter home. She's the last living whale from that capture period. And they all died much earlier deaths, but for some reason, Sk'aliCh'eLh is hung on, and she deserves to come back. And so that's a major part of the campaign that we're working on. We are locating an area to put her, what we call the Lummi Talk, her sanctuary, because we're not quite sure if she'll ever be rehabilitated enough to be set free, but this will at least be a home in the Salish Sea where she can hear the sounds of her pod again. And she'll be out of that sun, and she'll be able to swim, and it'll just be the best thing. And she won't be performing for her meals any longer. So that's a pretty big part of what we've been doing.
Yeah, for the people who don't know, can you elaborate a bit more about the relationship between the Lummi people and the orcas? I don't want to pronounce it wrong, but I'm gonna give it a try. The Xwe'chi'eXen. Xwe'chi'eXen. Gonna get there.
Yeah, it's a real Xwe'chi'eXen. So our people have always told stories, and it's what we grew up with, and we just simply know that they are our family. They're our family that lives under the water. They simply have a regalia that they wear, and that It's what they wear when they're under the water. And I guess we just all grew up hearing those stories. And that's how we feel about them. They're just an extended part of our family.
Would you want to share one of those stories or a bit more about that?
No, there's not many in the tribe that tell those stories, but they're pretty much left up to those people to do that.
Okay.
But if you ever get an opportunity to hear it, it's a wonderful story.
Look forward to that in the future. So how can people contribute to help the southern resident killer whales?
Well, we need to get them more fish. So we need to figure out what's happening to our fish. I do know that it's complicated. I personally believe that there are an awful lot of fish farms up in Canada. 400 fish farms used to be in the path of any baby salmon that came out of the river. Would have to pass by 400 of those fish farms before it got out to the open ocean. And every time they passed by or through one of those fish farms, they either got eaten as cheap food for the fish farm, or the fish farm gave them sea lice, which is a big problem that they have, and all sorts of viruses. They are doing some great work up there, and they have actually managed to clean out the fish farms in a couple paths that will now allow the young salmon out without getting covered in lice and viruses. So there's hope. There is hope that these fish can come down this river and now go out to the ocean and then come back to us.
What sort of changes have you seen in the salmon populations since you've grown up as a fisherman and your family has fished for many generations?
Well, it goes back even since time immemorial. I mean, there was a reason that when we signed the treaties, we knew that fishing and hunting was important. They talk about our rivers all being so full of salmon, you could walk across their backs. You know, most of our rivers now, you'd be lucky to really see a fish in. And for me, since I was 23, so however many years that's been, I've seen it go from something where we used to fish for maybe 45 days. We got 3 days this year.
Oof.
So I used to spend my entire summer on the boat, getting the boat ready and being ready to fish. Now, most of the years it's waiting, and our fisheries, they're not overfished. They're so well regulated that we never fish until enough fish have gone up the river to ensure that the run will be strong enough. So it's the waiting period usually to make sure enough fish are up there, and then they say, okay, you can go. And we have years like this where we got 3 days. So that's just the change in my lifetime that I've seen.
And that's just one human's life. Like, that's not very long compared to how long these salmon and orcas have been in the Salish Sea surviving.
Yep.
We have another question. Do you know how we measure the health of the Salish Sea, how that's going?
We often, when we talk about the Salish Sea, we request that. We request that they start figuring that out, how you figure out if we're past the tipping point. Are there too many ships already? Ship traffic, vessel noise really affects the orca. So 20 years ago, when there were less ships, less traffic, the orca had an easier time hunting because they find their fish using their little sonars. And now with all the extra noise in the water, they have to, and the lack of fish, they spend more of their time just hunting. They don't get to frolic and have fun like they used to. And we see that it, not so much this year, but last year, we really saw the effects of starvation on several of them. So that would be a good one, knowing if we're past the tipping point and how we can learn to control ship traffic, vessel traffic, slow things down.
Make it a bit more peaceful in the waters for the animals versus how busy it is now with the population along Puget Sound has just grown exponentially.
Yep. And that comes down to making simple choices too. Really, a lot of that ship traffic that I hear and see out here are goods being brought into the country. So if we all made a more conscious choice to buy American-made goods, so they're not coming across the sea and they're not coming in, you know, cargo ships. Yeah. So that's a little something a lot of people can do.
Start shopping local.
Yep.
And then you just recently had the 50th anniversary event, that Facebook Live event that the Sacred Sea hosted. Do you want to share that with people so that maybe they could view that Facebook Live event?
I believe it's still on our website, sacredsea.org. And that's where Julie, who I work with, does a really good job of putting everything we do on there and anything else that pertains to the Salish Sea. That was an event we had to commemorate her 50 years that she's been captured down there. To me, it's so unbelievable that for 50 years she has been doing tricks for her meals. It just really is time for her to come home. It's time for them to let her go and come home. Not sure how much life she could really have left, but I do know that her mother is still alive. Her mother still swims at her.
Wow.
And it would be really nice to get her home while her mom is still part of our Southern residents.
So that she has someone to go back to when she comes back here, rather than a more empty Salish Sea would just break everyone's heart if she was returned and her family wasn't there.
Yeah, I just can't imagine a Salish Sea that you just went out and told stories of once upon a time there were salmon out here. Once upon a time, those salmon fed our Xwe'chi'eXen, you know. Then you might as well be telling the time about once upon a time there were people called the Lactamish people, people of the sea, but none of them are around anymore because there is no salmon.
Then that's why we want to try and get more people to learn about the Sacred Sea organization and how they can get involved and help. Go into your website, checking that out. Just teaching people as well, or informing them about this sort of topic. People may not have ever known such a thing before. We've got some more questions coming in here. what positive efforts are happening to support the Salish Sea, or what improvements have you seen so far?
Yeah, I think the culverts, they're improving them is too new to see any direct change right now. But interesting enough, back in the 70s, the early king salmon run in our local Nooksack River, we noticed a real decline in the population, and we voluntarily stopped fishing on it. And that was in the 70s. And right up to, say, maybe 3 years ago, it was 6 years ago, I was reading a document, and I was like, okay, 176 fish. What is this, 17,000 fish? What are we? And our fish manager looked at me and goes, no, we're talking about 176 fish. That was the number of wild early spring kings we got back. And it's like, are you kidding me? But I don't know if it's a bright side of COVID this year, and I don't know what the number is. It was the biggest run we'd ever had back of the early kings. For some reason, they came back in the hundreds.
Ooh.
Because every year we do a targeted fishery on them. We do a tangle net fishery where they're not caught, they're tangled in the net, and then the fish is put into a big tank of water. It's looked at, and we figure out if it's a hatchery fish or a wild fish. If it's a wild fish, we tag it, and then we return it to the river a couple miles up so that hopefully it gets up. So we've been doing this tagging of these fish for years. So that's why we know we had an increase in this fishery. And then we keep the hatchery fish, and we feed our people with those. We use them at different events. But this year was the biggest return they've had since the 70s. That we know that 30 to 40% of our fish are incidental catches in Alaska and Canada. So we know that they were literally getting more of our fish than we got.
Wow.
So there wasn't any fishing in Canada last year. So I guess our fish weren't the bycatch. And so all of a sudden we got one of our biggest runs ever.
Fingers crossed that continues,
right?
But hopefully COVID doesn't.
Right. And those were Chinook. So there were plenty of Chinook out in the Salish Sea for the Xwe'chi'eXen this year.
And then there was a question earlier about what's your perspective on the hatcheries? I know you mentioned that in Canada, there's a lot that get in the way, but at the same time.
And that's a big difference between farmed fish and hatchery. That's, okay. Yeah.
Farmed was in Canada.
Yeah. And okay. Farm fish is an Atlantic salmon from the East Coast. It's not even native to us. And they're just raised in the pens. And they're fed pellet food that's dyed, so their meat is dark like real salmon. It's yeah, nothing good has ever come from a farmed fish. If they would just take them out of the water and put them up on land, then they're not impacting our wild salmon. But hatchery fish are necessary because of all the damage we've done as people with roads, houses, all the damage to the Puget Sound. Hatchery fish are mitigation. We've got to have those fish. And what they have done is they've taken a wild salmon and they've used her eggs, and they've raised them so every one of those eggs hatch and they all get to go back out. But they are native wild salmon. As opposed to the farm fish, which are Atlantic salmon from the East Coast. So I believe hatchery fish are going to be necessary until we can reverse some of the damage we've done. I mean, we have major damage in most of our rivers. All our near shore estuaries are nearly gone. So until we correct some of those things, we're going to have to keep helping them along by releasing hatchery fish. And I'm pretty sure the Xwe'chi'eXen doesn't know the difference between a wild Chinook and a hatchery Chinook. So they'll eat whichever Chinook they can come across.
Doesn't notice the fin difference in it.
No,
Like,
no,
okay.
doesn't know that. Notice the fin that's been clipped. Oh.
Has there been any restrictions that you've seen when trying to work between the American and Canadian border?
It's funny because when you're on the water, it's an imaginary line. So the damage that's done up there comes back across to us. But for some reason, they don't necessarily think that we should have a say in any of their projects. And so most of the time that we have gone up there and spoke, we've kind of had to push our way in. We've kind of had to say, no, you need to listen to us, because the damage from what you're doing, we feel.
It's a very much connected system up there.
Yep.
And then do you have any advice on engaging people who are not aware of the importance of the health of the Salish Sea?
Advice on it. I would just be a fisherman. I would just be on the deck of my boat in my rain gear, doing what I've always done and love to do. But I saw that someone's got to speak up. Someone's got to start talking to people. A lot of people don't learn about stuff until you tell them about it. You've got to let them know. And it's as easy as that. I think you've just got to help make people aware whenever you can. Public speaking, I would never have imagined me speaking to anyone, but it's something that's got to be done so that you can help share what's going on. We used to have a thriving herring fishery. We used to have a huge biomass of herring out here. And I point because Hales Pass is right behind my house here. 25 years ago, we had to stop fishing on those herring because the biomass had become too small. I think now it's almost non-existent. Even when we stopped fishing on it, it didn't recover. It just kept declining. And I never understood why nobody seemed to care. How is that not a warning that something's going on? Well, I started this by telling you guys, I haven't fished sockeye in 3 years. And now you see our southern residents starving. Now you're seeing the impacts on them. Why did it take to the top of the food chain for us to start to notice these things? When that herring population 25 years ago should have been a light bulb moment for us to say, there's something going on out there. We'd better look into what it is that's harming the Salish Sea. But we didn't. We basically had to wait till Sk'aliCh'elh packed her dead baby around for 14 or so days till all of a sudden people started noticing there's something happening to our Salish Sea.
It's like the salmon couldn't tell us. They had to wait till the orcas could tell us. And then we're like, oh, now there's a problem.
Now we get it. And I just hope it's not too late.
And then some more questions are coming in. Have you been able to form solidarity networks with northern tribes across the border who are also working to protect the native salmon populations?
Yes, we have. We work quite well with them. And it's a lot of the times it's them that lets us know of the projects that are coming along, because it's not like we get notices of them. They're like, hey, you should see what they're trying to do now up here. So we work pretty well with them. You got to remember that border was also put in a long time after we were here. So a lot of folks across the border are our families. Just because the border went in and now they're Canadian and we're American, we're still all related.
Same with the orcas, same with the salmon.
Exactly.
And then if the Florida Aquarium were to release the orca, is there a step-by-step plan in place for that at the moment?
There is.
Ooh.
And it is on sacredsea.org. There is a complete plan of every permit required, everything that's needed to do to bring her home. And it would just be a matter of getting her Lummi built. There's the design is there, everything that's needed to take care of her once she is here too is all in that plan. There's diagrams of it. It's this huge pen that she'd be able to finally swim these giant figure eights. And in the middle of it is an area where if she needed medical attention, she could come up on there. She's been trained to do it in the aquarium. So that part would be easy. I believe, yeah, I'm pretty sure the whole plan is on sacredsea.org.
And then the way people could help bring that to get it going would just be to help get the funds necessary for that tank.
Yes. On sacredsea.org, there is an area where people can donate to help bring her home and operate the facility.
And then someone was wondering, how do you transport an orca across the country?
The same way she got across the country, because she came from Whidbey Island and was transported down to Florida. And I believe it was, we would fly her home because that would be quicker.
Don't want to put her in a tank in a truck and bring her all the way across the states. Just
nope, that would be a little slow. So and I see there's a question, what are some of your favorite moments out on the water? I just wish that everybody in their lifetime got the opportunity to feel how we feel when we get back out in the islands. Just to be there and just to be doing what we do. There's not a more beautiful place than the Salish Sea. When you're running along the islands, it's so beautiful. And yeah, that's probably got to be one of my highlights. I mean, of course, this year we had a day out there where I can't remember if it was 2 of the pods came together, but I quickly contacted some of the folks I know, and I said, I saw 2 babies. So they let me know who they were. So one of them was Sk'aliCh'elh and her new baby. And then they're like, well, if you saw the 2 babies, then Ocean's son, who is Sk'aliCh'eXen's mom, they're like, well, she was there with them too. So there was a time, yeah, well, we were out on Salmon Island this summer and we got to watch them come through. They were running with the tide, and that was pretty magical too.
so I think it was like last fall that like 3 of the Southern residents were pregnant. And so Oh, so exciting.
Yep.
Hope they all survive and they all are healthy. We don't
We
want another relapse of an orca being towed.
we
Well,
just need them to all hold on until we can make things better for them. And we're trying, and there's people that are trying. There are things that are being done. So
we just got to try and get everyone on board. Everyone should hear about this and learn about it. And then is there a way that we can write to the aquarium to try and get them to release her back to us?
So right now the aquarium is changing hands from the people that have always owned it. And it's a new company that's purchased it, and they're called the Dolphin Company. And so for just right now, we're waiting for it to change hands. And we have hope that if we reach out to the Dolphin Company, that they're gonna agree to meet us, and we could probably we hope to take some good steps forward. Because the company that owned her previously, there was no negotiating with them or anything. But we have hopes with the new company that we can do it. And if people do tune into sacredsea.org, usually our call to actions we put on there when we need people to do things like that.
Everyone keep an eye out for that update on the website so we can all blast an email.
Exactly.
And then someone's wondering about if there's other sacred animals to the Lummi tribe.
I would have to say that's pretty much all of the animals that we have. We have our stories about everything. There's nothing as cool as watching a big family of otter run across the road to, come up into the woods over here. And we have eagles everywhere. I've had a deer in my front yard a couple of times this year. I mean, we're pretty fortunate that there's quite a few. We have the schools right behind me, and there was just recently mountain lion tracks. So we pretty much have it. There was a bear a couple years ago. There was a bear walking down the road, and it literally hopped in the water and swam over to Lummi Island. And then I believe it swam from Lummi Island to another one of the islands. So we hold them all sacred that are still here with us.
And then do you have any advice for young people who are feeling scared about losing the ecosystem, losing their future?
Not to be scared of it, to use it to empower themselves to make a difference. My dad and my aunt, they were once part of a group that helped save a village site that we had on Orcas Island, Madrona Point. And it was going to become condominiums. And we happened to have tree burials there. And it was a pretty sacred site. And they fought those condos, and we own Madrona Point, and it'll always be left as it is, as land. I've helped fight Xwe'chi'eXen, Cherry Point, when they wanted to put the world's largest coal terminal in there. I think they wanted to put 70 acres of coal over our most ancient village site. Wouldn't damage it because they weren't going to dig it up. They were just going to put the coal on top of them. But I helped, and that was my call, was to help fight that. And we took a bunch of fourth graders out to see Madrona Point. And if you've ever been around fourth graders, they're very energetic. And it was at the end, it was like, if you don't remember anything about today, I just want you guys to remember that some point in your life, there is going to be something you have to defend, that you have to do. And I just want you to remember that you can do it and you can step up and you can do it. So yeah, don't ever lose hope, because that's just your driving factor. The thing that's going to help you get
The
it done.
reason to keep going is there is hope. It's been done in the past. We can do it again. Oh, beautiful, wise words there.
Yep.
And then specific industries or companies that we need to hold accountable for their actions that are harming the Salish Sea at the moment that you know of, or?
Personally, if somehow the coal terminal across the border, I've never understood it. It's way out of date. I don't even know why we're still shipping coal. It's not worth anything. It pollutes on its whole route in train cars up to Canada. And the train, it's shipped all through the United States to get up to Canada. It's put on ships 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The noise that comes off of that is incredible. And then you see the water full of the dust. And then that coal gets shipped to China to make electricity, so they can make all the plastic stuff that people like to buy. So that kind of comes back to, if you buy local.
It's like, yeah, that's such a long process that hurts so many communities and ecosystems for a bit of plastic. Ugh.
Yep. Fossil fuel one, it's a tough one, but we need to start controlling it. It can't keep just getting bigger and bigger. The Salish Sea can't survive more and more ships. So that's one where we're just going to have to, it's going to have to be status quo, and hopefully status quo isn't over the tipping point.
Yeah, I think I read recently that like the sound or the noise pollution in the Puget Sound is greater than what the EU recommends. And it's like, hopefully we can stop it and have this be the cutting point. This is the stopping point. We don't need to reach that threshold. We just need to stop it now.
We would say "Quhoit." We draw the line. This is the line. Quhoit.
Gonna try and practice these, but there's no guarantees. So the Xwe'chi'eXen Island tribe in the South Sound was able to get back 125 acres of land. Are there any pieces of land that the Lummi, I mean, besides Cherry Point, or not Cherry Point, the Madrona Point, is there more that you're hoping to have returned?
Oh, there's lots. Years ago, there was another fight, and we were able to get back an area of land up toward in the mountains called Arlico Creek that holds some trees that were probably here when the settlers got here. And we thought those were important enough to be saved.
Because there's not a lot of those left.
Nope. So, and we're getting back little bits every now and then. We get more, a couple pieces. Everything that's not built up now is probably still important, though. But yeah, no, there would be a lot more I could think of that, yeah, would be nice to get back.
Because they were all over the Salish Sea, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of area that has now been turned into industrial or cities and urban.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we have the 3 refineries just right here, just north of our reservation, just past the border of it. And we just like to keep it at that. We don't want more.
There's no need for more.
Yes. And I was really glad to read that article about Sk'aliCh'eXen getting that 125 acres back. That would be a beautiful thing.
Seems like a lot of land, a
Yeah.
lot of memories, a lot of traditions. So if we don't have any more questions coming in, I do want to ask you if there's anything that anyone remembers from this presentation. What is the one takeaway that you hope everyone spreads to everyone that they know?
We all need to do our part to help bring the Salish Sea back to what it once was. I don't want us to become stories that we tell our grandchildren. Yeah. You're gonna make me cry.
No. It's like, it is a very emotional topic. I'm surprised you've stayed strong so far. I almost broke down here on this side, just listening to your stories and about your people. And oh, it's heartbreaking. But there's hope. There's hope.
There is. And I'm still hopeful. Or else I'd just be back on the deck of my boat.
Fishing the days you can and just
right.
not doing anything the other days.
Yep. No, there's still hope. We can do it. We've just all got to help make the change.
So you hear that, everyone out there? You've watched this. You've met Ellie now and Tomas?
Yes.
I can get that one. So thank you everyone for joining our Discovery Speaker Series with Ellie Kinley here. Make sure that you go check out sacredsea.org and check around their website, learn all about, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right again, the Sk'aliCh'eLh.
That's her name.
Okay.
Xwe'chi'eXen or Orca.
Xwe'chi'eXen orcas. So learn about her, learn about how we can help bring her back, and about all of her family that lives around here still, and hopefully will continue to survive in this area.
And bringing her home is the beginning of the apology. Apologizing for what we allowed to have done. Making it whole again.
Bringing her home, making us all feel more at home here in the Salish Sea, more like it back to nature. So I really do want to thank you, Ellie, for taking the time out of your schedule to come and talk to us. And I hope that we have inspired a lot of people to learn more and take action. And if there are any more questions that people have, you can type those into the comments, and we can get those and send them to Ellie and see if she can respond to more of them. Otherwise, our next Discovery Speaker Series will be on February 3rd at the same time, 6:30 to 7:30, but we don't have anyone yet. We're on the lookout for hopefully a person of color to talk about birds. Since February is the time of the Great Backyard Bird Count, we're hoping to inspire people to learn more about the birds and their communities. So if anyone watching knows someone who is a person of color that either studies birds or is just a hobbyist birder, we would love to hear from them and to give them a platform to share their stories.
Thank you for giving me the time to tell my little bit of my story.
We are so honored to have you here. Yeah, So thank you everyone for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening and have a good day.
Hi, Scott.